Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name's Ketevan, and today we're going to be doing a recent reads video. I've read a few books since the last one, and apologies, I'm sure you can hear the drumming in the background. It's Chinese New Year, and yeah, they're going to be drumming for a while because they're doing a parade, and they've been drumming for a while and they haven't started the parade yet, so I can't really wait much longer in terms of filming, so we're just doing it, and I hope it's not too annoying, so apologies. So the first book I read was Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson. Stevenson is a defense attorney, a lawyer, who very early in his career decided he wanted to help wrongfully convicted people, and he started a nonprofit. I believe the nonprofit's in Alabama or Georgia, I can't remember, but basically those southern states are where the largest number of work was for him to do. So that's where he focused most of his career. And this book actually was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. I think I mentioned this in the last video. I was really worried that it was going to be super introductory and really basic and just kind of emotional. And it is emotional, don't get me wrong, but it's really, really well done. You know, the majority of the story is focusing on Walter McMillan, one of his first clients, who was wrongfully convicted of a murder. And the evidence was so clear that he did not do it, but, you know, the powers that be decided they needed to find somebody, and he fit the bill in the non-reality sense. It wasn't even that there was no evidence, it was there was evidence proving he had alibis. You want to say it's shocking, but it's not shocking if you know really how the American criminal justice system works. But if you don't know, this is a great introduction. So, and what I really liked is that it was actually not just all about Walter McMillan, this one person. Each chapter section really goes briefly into different people and, you know, talks about kind of how they ended up in a place where they were in a situation where they were surrounded by criminal activity, or in a lot of cases, the people did commit the crimes. It's just that because of racial reasons, aka racism, their sentences were ridiculously overblown. So, you know, the child shot a person, and then 9 months later that person died. You know, that to me is not murder. That, but you know, sentenced to life for murder was what happened to that child. And so just things like that where, you know, throughout the whole time you're like, wow, wow, wow. And so I think that's why it's a really great introduction, because, you know, you can say that the system is twisted, you can try to explain it to people, but without these stories to really understand just how twisted something can get into a situation where you have a 14-year-old being imprisoned for the rest of their life, even for murder, that's not acceptable. So, and also things about the death sentence is I think Walter McMillan at first was on death row, I believe. Yeah, I think that's what it was. First it was to get him off death row. Anyway, so excellent, highly recommend. I haven't watched the book yet, but I actually might, just based on the book. I know it will be probably a little bit different because it's a different format, but it was good. This next one I didn't love as much as I thought I would. The Diving Bell and the Butterfly by Jean-Dominique Bauby. I think I've talked about this book a lot on this channel, but he's a guy who's a magazine editor who had some sort of accident. Just a stroke. Just a stroke, no big deal. But anyway, he had a stroke which left him with locked-in syndrome, which is when you cannot move anything but your eyes. He wrote this memoir by blinking it out. So you blink, you know, a certain number of times for each letter, and so letter by letter he blinked out this book, which is very impressive, and it's definitely well written. You know, it's poetic, it's pretty prose, things like that. But it's very, as you might expect, it's in chunks, and those chunks don't really connect that well, which is totally understandable. It's not bad, I just didn't, you know, it didn't evoke a lot of emotions for me. Do I think it's worth reading it? Yeah, because I mean, this is important. The misogyny didn't bother me as much as I thought it would, I'll say that as well. So that, I guess, was good. I had been warned about that, so. Next up is All About Love, New Visions. This one's by Bell Hooks. I read it for one of my polyamory videos, so I won't say too much about it. I really don't like reading on ebooks, so it was a slog. And I finally I don't know, I had checked if there was an audiobook months ago, but I finally just Googled it again, and I found a YouTube video of a very nice man reading it out loud. I mean, of course, technically it's illegal, but I mean, Bell Hooks is dead, and I'm sure she would like you to read her work, you know, buy a copy, buy an ebook. I don't know if you feel guilty about it, but I didn't feel guilty listening to this audiobook. And so like objectively, of course, if you were paying for an audiobook, this would be terrible. But he is so precious. Like you can hear the pages turning when he like gets confused on a sentence, because some of her sentences are a bit long. He'll be like, oh wait, I lost my place, and like start the sentence over. He'll like just tell you, oh, I don't know how to pronounce that word. And then after like the same word, I wish I remembered what word it was, but the same word keeps popping up. And he's like, I should probably look up that word. It's gonna probably keep popping up. It's just so cute. And I don't know, I just really felt like a friend was reading you a book, and it's really, really nice. So I highly recommend it. Like even if you don't typically, you know, need audiobooks, it's just to have that kind of experience. I've never had that kind of experience as an informal audiobook, because even with LibriVox, which is like all, you know, volunteers, it's not super high quality in terms of like professional equipment and things like that. They're never like informal like that. They're always like, you know, they're reading it like you're kind of supposed to read it. So anyway, I really, really like that. But I won't talk too much about the contents, but very, very good book itself. Alrighty, next up is The Big Sleep, Raymond Chandler. I picked this up when, I think I talked about this in the last video. I got it while I was with Ann Novella, and it's okay. I mean, it's older, so of course it's super racist and sexist and stuff, and that's fine. Like it didn't like, you know, it didn't bother me reading it, but it was just sort of like, okay, like, I don't know, if you're into that like look see here kid like kind of vibe, like the noir, crime noir like vibe, it's definitely it. Like this is one of the classics from that era, but it just didn't like wow me. So, you know, I'm glad I read it, but nothing to write home about. And then this, I'm so happy I finally read this. So it's Break It Down by Lydia Davis. It's a short story collection. I read Varieties of Disturbance, which is another short story collection of hers in college. It was assigned reading in a lit class I took, and I loved it so much that when I got home after college that year, I immediately bought this. It was published in 2008, so that's how I know I like bought it right away. Like I was like so excited for it, and I had never read it until now, and I don't know why, because I've been literally carting it around this whole time. I've literally brought this book around the world, and I just never picked it up, and I don't know why, because her she's famous for like ultra short stories. This collection actually has quite a few longer ones, but like most of her short stories, let me flip to one. Actually, no, I mean, most of her short stories in this collection at least are at least like a couple pages. Some of them are longer, but a lot of them are just like a paragraph. That's the whole story. Again, since I was 18 and being taught this book in a lit class, the professor didn't bother to be like, actually, this is very controversial and a lot of people hate Lydia Davis because she does this. So I just like was introduced to her as like, this is good literature, and obviously I agreed because I loved it and I bought more. But yeah, like later now as an adult, I'm realizing like a lot of people really do not like her style, but I love it. I love it, love it, love it. And I'm so happy that I finally read this. Like you can see it's so, maybe you can't see it, but it's like so beaten up. It looks like I've read it like 5 times. And it's just that it's been packed in suitcases a dozen times and like hauled around the world following me, and now I'm probably gonna keep it forever just because this is like I think one of the longest books it took me to read that like I was actually always excited about reading, and I just never did. I don't know, it's just very weird. Why? Anyway, okay, so next up is Violets by Shin Kyung-suk, who is Korean, and it's translated from the Korean by Anton Her. And I actually, as I was reading this, did not like it that much. I read it for a queer lit book club. She's not queer. The book's not particularly super queer. So I was kind of like, huh, why are we reading this? Also, it's very slow paced. Also, it's very like obvious and heavy handed with the metaphors and the symbolism. But after the book club meeting, we had such a good discussion about it that it kind of changed my mind. And this is where, like, I don't know, I feel like sometimes book club can like make or break a book. Like sometimes if you force yourself to read a book just for book club, you'll end up hating it just because you wouldn't have normally picked it up. But other times when I force myself through a book club book, I end up liking it a lot more just because I hear what other people say about it. I don't know, it was more fun discussing it than reading it, let's put it that way. But I'm really glad I read it. I don't know, it's one of her earlier works, and you can kind of tell, like, that's why it's a little obvious with the symbolism and metaphors. But if you're new to literature, like if you haven't taken like a proper super intense literature class where they're really going into all the different things you can do with literature. I don't even know what to call them. That's been like 15 years since I took a lit class. But if you're kind of like new to like figuring out like what things mean in books, like this is a really good way to do it through translated literature. So I would recommend it for that. It's a nice commentary on Korean feminism. I think I would recommend it. So yeah, I'm glad I read it. And then next, or last but not least, we have Love, A Very Short Introduction by Richard de Souza. This is another one of those very short introductions from Oxford World Press, or Oxford Press, I think. And I really enjoyed this one. You know, I'm not sure what Richard de Souza is. I think he's a philosopher, but he might be a sociologist. Either way, it's a really good overview of like the Western conception of love and kind of like how that's changing and you know, going to continue to evolve, because obviously, like, as we know, the concept of love has changed a lot in the last like few hundred years. I won't be talking about this too much because it's for another video. Especially if you have a Scribd subscription, highly recommend it. It's on audiobook. I'm really enjoying these Scribd very short introduction like collection. It's very, very nice. So those are all the books I read. I did want to give a little bit of an update with Assembly. So last time I think I said I was going to a talk by Natasha Brown. I did. It was wonderful. I 100% need to reread this book because she said so many things about it that I was like, oh, I didn't get that. I didn't get that. And I'm really excited to reread it now that I've heard her thoughts on her own book. Like, for example, the whole framing of like she's preparing to go to her boyfriend's family country house is actually like the framing she has taken from classic novels, like from Jane Austen. Like usually it's the framing is like, oh, we're at someone's country house, and like and shenanigans ensue kind of thing. And so like I was just kind of like, oh, I didn't even pick up on that like at all as I was reading. And I think most people didn't, because I'd never seen that in any of the reviews or anything. But yeah, so she signed it. Very nice. And I actually like, I think this is the author that has made me change my mind about like meeting authors and signing books. Like I think I have 2 other books signed by the author, like to me specifically. And I never really like, I don't know, like meant much, but because her talk was so good, like I wish I'd recorded it because it was like, or like had a transcript or something. Like she said so many super amazing things, but the one thing that really stuck out to me is that, you know, she is not a professional writer. I mean, I think now she is, but at the time when she was prepping this book and writing this book, she was working in finance. So this is a little bit autofiction. She works in finance, and because our protagonist works in finance as well. And she knew that she didn't want to write a book that wasn't going to be publishable. So her goal was to find something to write that she knew could be published, meaning like a publishing company would buy it from her. And so she did that in a way. So that's why it's autofiction. That's why, like, you know, a female Black protagonist that looks very similar to the author is the center protagonist, because that's what is currently selling. Like, we want owned voices. We want, you know, marginalized voices. So that is what she decided to write. She said that was actually super helpful because for her first book, like I mean, when you haven't written anything, that means every story in your head is still in your head. And so it can kind of go anywhere, and having that like framework, she said, really helped her like just get the book out. And it's short. It's literally 100 pages. And she said that wasn't on purpose. That was just like the whole story. And someone asked if she wanted to do a sequel because we kind of don't know what happens to these characters. And she's like, oh, no, like that's their story. Like, what else would I say? That this is the whole story. It's like, that's it. So nice. It was just so nice to hear her talk. So I just want to give a little update on that. So I'm really happy I now have signed copy. And then I wanted to, I'm not going to really go this time into all the books that I've been reading because there's a lot, and also like, I don't know, I just think it's kind of boring to talk about books as I'm reading them unless I have something to say. So the only one I'm going to mention is Dangerous Liaisons, and that's mostly because I'm really enjoying it. However, it is driving me absolutely nuts that I still do not have my hard copy. I ordered it like at the end of December and it's still not here. It's like the 3rd week in January already, and I don't think it's gonna come for a while. So I'm really hating reading it on ebook, and I don't know, like we'll see how it goes, but basically I'm just like, I feel like I'm literally slogging through because I have to read it on ebook, and that's not fun because I'm enjoying the actual story but just really disliking the format, which kind of sucks. But, and of course normally I wouldn't care because obviously, you know, it doesn't really matter when the book arrives, but because this is a read-along, I'm a little frustrated. I do still have time. I think I'll be able to finish it, but I kind of want to participate in the discussion now. So this book is for, I actually forget the name. Sorry, guys. I forget the name of the project, but basically Micah Cummins and Ann Novella are co-hosting this thing where they read a different classic every 6 weeks. And so this time frame for Dangerous Liaisons is like, it ends in mid-February. And so I'm like, kind of like, I want to talk about it now and not at the very last minute. But you know, it is what it is. I have to wait because what are you gonna do? Can't magically make the British mail things faster. So, yeah, basically that's the only one I'm going to talk about that I'm like in the midst of reading. I'm really into it. Like, wow, like you know, within the first 3 pages, I remembered like, oh my gosh, this is the book that Cruel Intentions is based on. As soon as we got a letter from Cecile, I was like, oh, that's right, that's the Cecile. Oh, if you haven't seen that movie, it's such a good movie. Like, I'll link an article down below explaining why it's so good. I mean, obviously it's a cheesy teenage movie. Like, it's not actually like great cinema or anything like that, but you know, for the time it came out in like either 98 or 99, I think, and like for the time, I mean, it addressed racism. It had a gay kiss. It was really pushing limits, and you know, of course, if you weren't a teenager in that era, you wouldn't recognize these names, but like Sean Patrick Thomas, Selma Blair, Reese Witherspoon, and what's her name? Buffy. Sorry. Freddie Prinze Jr. is her husband, and her name, Sarah Michelle Gellar. So like all these people are in this movie. It's so fantastic. And I know that the book is really different from the show, but I'm just really enjoying like reading this book through the lens of the movie, which is weird, but I don't know, I'm really enjoying it. So, okay. And then, really quickly, I'm going to talk, I'm not going to really talk about it, but I'm going to just share the 2 books I bought. So I got these 2 books. I really, I'm looking forward to reading them. They're in French. I got them at a French feminist bookstore. And, I posted them on my Instagram. So my Instagram, I literally go on my Instagram, or I used to go on my Instagram like literally every 2 months. Like I never went on because every time you go on there, it's basically all ads and boring pictures, and I just don't, I was like, what's the point? Why do people go on Instagram? And then, I don't know, I was probably talking to someone one day and I realized like, oh, it's because I haven't talked the algorithm like exactly what I want. And I was like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna, you know, make it a book space because that's all I really care about these days is like reading recommendations. And so I went on there and I followed a bunch of publishers I like, a bunch of booktubers I like. And I'm really trying to like, you know, cultivate that space for myself. Like, I mean, like I'll link my Instagram below. You're more than welcome to follow me. I am trying to post more occasionally, but you know, like I haven't posted like since the beginning of COVID anything, and now I'm trying to post more book content, so you're more than welcome to follow me, but it's more about like me actually enjoying Instagram because I just haven't in years, and so I'm really trying to make an effort. So yeah, if it's, you know, that's my big goal for this year in terms of social media, is to actually use Instagram for book content that's enjoyable to me and not just like generic content. So I posted about these books on there, and I'll try to like do that more. I don't know, we'll see. Like I say I'll post on here too, and I don't, so what do you know? I'm not very good at keeping promises, so we'll see. So I think that's going to be it for this video. Let me know what you've been reading, anything interesting, anything terrible. If you've read any of these books that I've talked about, please let me know your thoughts on them. And until next time, bye!